Right, I'm in Gosport. This is the Alliance Royal Navy submarine at the Submarine Museum in Gosport. We're going to have a walk around.
Technically in the area of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And of those 16, only 2 were completed before the end of the war. Never saw any action. The only action that these submarines have been in, not all of them, but some of them is in the 60s when Malaysia and Indonesia had a conflict, and we were assisting the Malaysians in running from Singapore. HMS Terror there, they would go on patrol in the Straits looking for insurgents disguised as fishermen on the fishing boats, so they would stop, inspect, and if everything was okay they could let them carry on, but if there was any doubts they would act accordingly. Now, when she was first built, this is what she looked like. A bit of a mess structurally. And after the war, we were going into the Cold War period, where we were sort of spying and trying to find out what the Russians were doing. So they wanted a quieter submarine. So they all went about, all bar one went in for what they call the streamlining refit, and she ended up looking like this picture here, and as you see her up on the blocks. So now all the masts are now down in the side, inside the fin, which makes it a lot quieter, because these masts with all these projections and that sticking out, underwater bubbles are formed, and the bubbles, when they collapse, they make a noise, and sonar was being much improved, so that would give your position away. So that's why they went in for this streamlining refit. Now, originally she had 2 external bow tubes, and back aft they had 2 external torpedo tubes as well. So a total in all of 10 torpedo tubes, and they could carry 10 reloads, 4 aft and 6 in the forings there. You can see the wrecks when you go through. Now, they also had a gun, 4-inch gun. Back in the war, radar wasn't too brilliant, so they felt a lot safer surfacing, and especially against an unarmed merchantman, and bop off with the gun. Now, they could carry 200 shells in the magazine, and they probably did cost £100, £200 each. Whereas a torpedo costs exactly the same as a Spitfire, £13,000.
God.
If you can find a Spitfire for £13,000, please recommend. So they would fire 3, maybe 4 torpedoes, hoping one would hit. So there's quite a lot of wastage involved there. So maximum would be 20 torpedoes, and they would say they would fire 3 or 4 at a time, hoping one would hit. So it was much more economically sensible to use the gun. See the 2 periscopes there. Now, when you get to the control room, Paul can tell you all about that. But the forward one is the attack periscope. You notice it's got a narrower neck, and that produces a smaller wake as it's going through the water, less visible. White wake against a grey, so less visible to any lookouts. And the after one is the search periscope, basically a lookout position.
Did it have a snorkel? You know, like some of these German...
Yes, it did. And this is the snorkel mast here. Originally it was hydraulically raised.
Oh, right.
But now it's all periscopically raised, the same as all the other masts that are inside the fin. The back end of the fin is where they're small.
So when it had that snorkel up then, how deep was it? How far underwater was it?
45 feet roughly.
Right.
Yeah. So the only thing that would be sticking up would be the snorkel mast and the periscope for lookout, because when you're snorking, nobody can see you, but you want to see them. So that search periscope would be permanently low. Just before you go on board, if you look behind you there, that big tower, about 100 foot of water, and that is where we did our training for escape purposes. They're no longer in use. Okay, now when we go on board, if you mind your heads as you're going through the door, and on the way through, there's quite a lot of head hazards and a few trip hazards, and the worst compartment for trip hazards is this one, and your eyes will have closed down in the daylight. So,
yeah.
They will open up, so just be aware that there are some trip hazards there.
You see this, look, Sebastian, torpedo. And then under here, look, we've got a canoe. Underneath, we've got a canoe, look, for special forces.
Whoa.
So they could launch like Royal Marines on, you know, when the tubes are in there. Look,
This is the forward torpedo stowage compartment with the 4 ends there. You've got the 4 internal tubes. And this torpedo here, the Mark 8, it's brought on board by a crane hanging from a crane on this band here. Now, I've got a picture I could show you somewhere, maybe. Anyway, comes down through the torpedo loading hatch. There's an angled hatch above the ladder there. Put on the deck, transferred to this hoist here, and first 4 into the tubes, and the remaining 6 into the racks. Now, okay, this is extra equipment that's been put on later. That big box there is the aerial wire guided torpedoes. With this torpedo, once you've fired it, you have no control. So the captain's going to be very careful in working out what the zigzag pattern of any enemy shipping might be taking, random pattern, just to make it difficult for the submarine to work out where it is. So the captain will be doing searches through the attack periscope, and then it'll be plotted, and he'll try and work out that pattern. And then when he's satisfied he knows where the target will be, when the torpedo reaches it, he'll give the order to fire. Perhaps Paul will tell you a little bit more about that. This torpedo here, the Mark 8, was designed in the 1920s and was still in use in the 1980s. 3 of these were fired from one of our nuclear submarines. You may have heard the news back in 1982 when we had the conflict with the Argentinians down at the Falklands, and 3 fired at the Argentinian ship, the Belgrano, and 2 of those torpedoes hit. And she said there was a bit of controversy about that action because the Belgrano was outside of the exclusion zone, but there was intelligence to say something was going on between her task group and the carrier task group of the Argentinians, so the order came from Whitehall to engage, and that's exactly what he did. They have been ducking in and out all day, so the decision was made to engage, and yes, he did. Now, in the museum, there's a mock-up of the captain's cabin in the Conqueror, where Chris Reefer-Brown, the captain, is explaining about the attack. And you look on his face, you can see it's something he wasn't particularly happy having done, because over 300 lives were lost in that action. But they were doing plenty of damage with their Air Force, so something had to be done. Now, I've read an article quoting the captain of the Belgrano, and he said he would have done exactly the same thing. They were at war, sadly lives are lost, and that's what they were trained to do. Chris Reefer-Brown was a very respected and capable officer. He was my last boss when I was in submarines, so I can vouch for his capabilities. He was a guy you couldn't know. Sad though it may be. One positive thing, their navy never came to sea again after that action, so maybe that helped to hasten the end of the conflict and save many more lives. Now you see a canoe here. Good example in the 60s when they had the conflict with, Malaysia had a conflict with the Indonesians. On these patrols that they went on, they would carry Marines or SBS, Special Service guys, and what would happen, they'd be perhaps tasked to go up into the jungle and spy or any sort of sabotage just to hinder the Indonesians as well. And then what would happen, the submarine would surface, they'd take the boat, which is a folding boat, and comes in kit form, so they take it up through the torpedo loading hatch, erect it and put themselves and all the gear in, and go off and do what they were tasked to do and be picked up at a later date. Now, I was out in Singapore at the same time, but I'd just finished my training and I was working in a lovely air-conditioned radio station, not suffering the privations that these guys had. And I spent most of my time playing rugby with the Aussies and the Kiwis. Really good. At a young age, I had a good education in rugby as well. I did have one important task, and that was to test the Tiger beer for when the lads came back. Well, somebody had to do it. Now, my experience, I'm a nuclear submariner. I've worked on these submarines but not served on them. I was on a submarine depot ship up in Paz Lane at the Navy base up there. And when they came alongside, I was a radio maintainer, and when they came alongside, I would assist as necessary if they needed any help there. Routine maintenance or any problems that they did have. And when they came alongside after an lengthy period, opened the hatch and it did smell a little bit. There's no showers on here. They could go away for about 6 weeks, take enough food. You see all the food here. Once they've got the weapons in, it'll be put on the deck, so lost another 9 inches of headroom, banging your head even more. So be careful of that. Water is a major problem. The only water they have is when they top the tanks up on sailing. We do have a small distilling plant, but it's not very efficient and wouldn't keep up with any use. It was just for emergencies, really. Now, in a nuclear submarine, you know, you've got unlimited supply. You've got a big tank outside you. You can make all the water you want with the distilling plants they have on board, or desalination plants, distillers, and then with that water, put it through electrolyzer, separate the hydrogen and oxygen, get rid of the hydrogen, you've got all the oxygen for breathing. The only other consideration, 140 men, we're going to produce a lot of CO2, so we have CO2 scrubbers. Now, this submarine's range, because she's going to be working out in Singapore, or running from there in the Far East, big ocean, the stations where they're working at, we're a long way from the Japanese waters, so what is long distance? Capable of doing 10,500 miles on the surface using the diesel engines, but when they dive, you're reliant on the batteries, so they have to be fully charged, and if you can only do that distance drops down to 90 miles, and to achieve that distance you've got to do about 3 knots, very slow speed. Not a problem because the slower you are, the quieter you are. But do the sums, 3 into 90 is 30. That's the maximum time these submarines can stay underwater without snorkeling. It's 30 hours. Now, I've been on patrol and underwater for 51 days as the longest patrol I've done. And now the guys are going away on deterrent patrols on the Valiant class submarine, Vanguard class I should say, and they're doing upwards of 6-7 months underwater. So the reason you can do that is, as I've said, you can make all the water you want, you make all the air you want. No showers on here. The only nod to hygiene is to wash your hands after using the loo and
Forward
cleaning your
control
teeth.
room, forward hatch shut and clipped. Forward torpedo loading hatch shut and
Clothing,
gone back to
just take
Four ends,
any
both
old
of the
clothes
half
really, no uniform. The space is just not here, there's nowhere to put it, so they have a change of underpants, shorts, t-shirt, that's about it really, nowhere to put it. And hot bunking, 65 men on here. We want to count the beds. I'd like done it, but I know there's not enough. They would hot bunk. They would have their own sleeping bags, so when they come off watch time and get your head down, they would just find an empty space and get their heads down. It's not a great problem. There's enough room for that because a third of the crew are going to be on watch or working anyway, so that's an extra problem. Right, how are we doing for time? Yeah, the next one should be in a couple of minutes. Just before I send you on your way, this is also an escape compartment, this being the escape hatch. And in escape, there could be 60 odd men in here. You've got to flood this compartment, so we're making that airspace a lot less. 60 odd guys are going to produce a lot of CO2, so we use these breathing masks. You look around the manifold there, more than enough for everybody on board, because you may have the extra personnel, the Marines, people under training, trials teams. So we've got extra masks so that they can breathe this clean air. And they get the pressure in here exactly the same by flooding it up as outside. Open the hatch, because if you haven't got the pressure in here the same as outside, that hatch won't open. And a big trunking comes down just so that it stop that water getting above head height, and making an uncomfortable situation perhaps a little bit more comfortable. So when the time comes, hatch will open, first guy goes out, make sure he breathes out, because he doesn't want the air in his lungs expanding in that 100-foot tower. If you held your breath, the volume of air in your lungs would be 3 times the amount. Embolisms. Not good. Right, I'm going to send you on your way now. The next watertight compartment is all accommodation. Now the first one is a junior rates mess. They've got all the junior ratings of all branches in there. The next mess is the stoker's mess. Now they're the junior engineers, and the deck plates have been lifted, and you can see one of the battery banks that we have on board. We have 2, one at the same time you can't see, it's underneath the control room area. But there's two banks, and they produce all the power for everything electronically underwater. more importantly, to power the propulsion motor. The next mess is the senior rates mess. That will be petty officers and chief petty officers of all branches. On the table in there, you'll see a wreath. Now, the sister submarine of HMS Alliance, HMS Affray, went on an exercise in 1951.
Forward torpedo loading hatch shut
And they
and
think the score passes. The hydraulically lifted one broke off or cracked and filled the engine room full of water, making the submarine too heavy to surface again. So they have the wreath on there because the Alliance, on behalf of the families, I believe it was on the first anniversary of a loss, on behalf of the families, had the wreath on the submarine loss, which is now lying on in a deep channel off the Channel Islands, Herds Deep. And then the final mess in this next watertight compartment is the artificers mess. Now they're the senior engineers, if you like, maybe mechanical, radio, electrical, weapons, and the coxswain would be there. I'm guessing the coxswain would be there because on the table you see the most important fuel in the Navy, the rum. And the coxswain always looked after that. Then after that is the control room, and my colleague in there who can perhaps explain the future, but I'm sure he will, how things work in there. Probably a little bit more exciting, the most exciting component on the ship for information and see what's going on. So please enjoy it. If you want to see anything, if you see something we haven't explained to you, please come and ask us. 47, yeah. I think it came in
Should we have a wander down there, mate? Let's have a wander. Well, mind yourself because it's dangerous. Right, so here you go. There's some. This is one of the messes. Look, you can see. You can see. Look, they've got a projector on the table, cups of tea,
Yeah.
so they can sit there, watch a film.
You
You have a look. And then this is one of the bunks, which ain't very big. I'll tell you what, you wouldn't want to be a fatty. I'll tell you what, that'd do you up there, wouldn't it? You imagine if you were sleeping on there. That wouldn't be too bad. And all this, look, these are all the bunks where the crew would sleep. Oh yeah, look, some breakfast. Yeah, beans, sausages and eggs. HP sauce, look. How about that? Some more bunks.
Anyway, it's baby's heads tomorrow.
Yeah, some more bunks. Oh, there's this wreath, look. So this is the sister ship of this alliance that has unfortunately sunk. And that's why we've got the wreath.
Yeah, half of these are still stuck on.
Yeah, and then we've got the rum. So that's what they have. They have in the Royal in the Navy. They have like to keep you going. They have rum. They keep some rum down you. On your head.
Yep.
This is the galley. Look. So we've got a kitchen sink for doing a bit of washing. Well, we've got a nicer cabin there. Look, very homely.
Well,
Isn't it?
it is lovely.
Very homely. And this is the main where they're doing the driving of the boat sort of thing.
Look through this.
Yeah.
Whoa. Nice view.
Yeah, you know, in the war films, there's like, well, you see that scene where they go, pull all HP master blowers, and some bloke will walk down the boat and he's pulling all these handles quick.
It's over there.
Is it? Oh, what, these?
No, those are the ballast tank valves.
Right.
There's 4 valves there.
Right. Yeah, I always wondered that, you know, like on them. You just wonder if it's just for effect or if that is what's going on, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, what about, is that the?
I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Well, wait to get to. Yeah, that's all right. Fair dues.
Keep coming, keep coming.
It's lovely, so interesting.
How many more is in the group?
Two more.
Two, yeah, two more.
Officer of the watch, sound room, contact 09, bearing 287, one sharp 4 blades, 290 revolutions, in out, class 5 fitting vessel.
Keep coming.
Nothing visual, watch 0.
Looking at all the accommodations. It's quite interesting.
Oh, you can read this.
Just when it's empty. When it's full of beer.
Yeah,
Gosh, no.
yeah. It's all the different ships. So when I'm guessing when they look through the telescope here, they see a silhouette of a ship, and then they can double check it. They can go, oh, it's a Russian
Keep 53.
cargo ship, or it's a warship.
53.
It'll be all warships from different countries. Look,
Keep coming,
minesweepers
keep
and
coming.
things like that. They just check the silhouette. They go like look through the periscope, and then they go, oh, it's got 2 stacks, 4-inch guns. And then they'll decide what it is.
Keep coming.
Hey,
Come all the
big
way
one,
in.
isn't it?
Right, I'll just tell you a bit about the control room and then I'll play you we've got a scenario, okay? Basically this is where the submarine's controlled from, obviously. Main features are the 2 periscopes, the attack periscope and the search periscope. I'll tell you more about those after. And these are the driving positions. So the guy at the front there is the helmsman. So if there was a window, he'd be the driver, okay, left and right. And these 2 here are what we call the planesmen. So that when the submarine is dived, they keep us on the horizontal. They take us down and they bring us up, okay? Diving the submarine, the scenario goes through it, and what I will do is, I'll let you, if you stand sort of in the middle, you'll hear the background dialogue going on. But basically, the scenario is, we're along the surface, the captain decides to dive the submarine, it goes through the procedure, and then we go in deep, and then there's a contact going to go above us, a ship, and as we go down, the ship goes across, and then they eventually drop a depth charge, and that's at the end bit, okay? I'll explain bits as we go through, but I'll also explain a bit more at the end of it, okay? So first of all, we go to red lighting, which is what we would be in. Right.
Keep 53.
Starboard 10, steer 350.
So we're going that way, 10
10
degrees,
degrees of
that way.
starboard wheel on, sir.
We're on the surface.
Captain, sir, watching bearing green 30 makes 4,000 yards.
Officer of the watch,
You see
dive
the
the
ship.
submarine.
Control room, press the klaxon twice.
Diving station.
We're now going down,
Main vents open. Midship.
water's coming in, air's going out, there's ballast tanks.
Down
I'll
to
tell you
70
about
feet,
that.
back to 55. We don't want to show anything on the surface.
Officer of the watch in the tower.
Upward shot, 1 clip.
Down 75 feet, up to 50 feet,
Upward shot,
which is our periscope.
Shut 2 clips. Mast.
Upward shot, 2 clips, 1 pin.
Shut 2 clips, 1 pin.
Upward shot, 2 clips, 2
Upward
pins.
shut 2 clips, 2 pins.
All masks down.
Officer of the watch, below. Aft ends closed up at diving station.
Low Q. 45 feet. 50 feet.
Q blown. Q Kingston shut.
55 feet. Vent Q.
Space closed up at diving
60
station.
feet.
Engine room closed up at diving
65
station.
feet.
Q vented. Q vent shut.
70 feet.
Closed up at diving station.
65 feet. Submarine is
We've gone to
closed.
70, we'll come back up to 55 feet, and use our periscope depth,
On deck, 55 feet.
Shut main vents.
Shut main vents.
Raise attack periscope.
which is this periscope.
Speed for trim.
The captain now can
Speed for trimming, sir. Group down, half a head together.
Enemy warship now at range of 3,000 yards coming towards. Intend going deep and evading in case he
going that
depth
way.
charges us.
He's coming that way.
All compartments shut off for counterattack.
Happy with the trim, sir.
10 down, keep 500 feet. Assume ultra quiet state.
So he's now decided to dive the submarine and get out of the way of this ship that's coming up. You'll hear the
100
sonar
feet.
increase in tempo now. You hear it in
The
the
submarine
background.
is in the ultra quiet state, sir.
Roger, First Lieutenant. Sonar, what have you got on the contact?
Cash cruise, 5 blades, 180 revolutions per minute. Approximate speed, 15 knots, sir.
It's the sonar
Yes, I
operator
concur.
telling the
A
captain
frigate.
what the target is.
150 feet.
I'll start getting more frequent as it
200
comes
feet.
closer. And then the engines will hear as it goes over us.
He's changed his sonar to a shorter range scale.
Here we go.
He must think he's pretty close.
That's right.
250 feet.
But we're constantly going down. We're still 250 feet.
He might try to attack us. Stand by for depth charges.
300 feet.
Nearly on top. Nearly on top.
350 feet.
And we're 350 feet.
Depth charges out to drop.
400 feet.
400 feet. We're now at 500 feet. Leveled off.
Sonar report.
Doppler low. Target opening. Frigate's moving away now, sir.
So he's gone off that way and we're going off that way. And the
All
cap-
compartments report damage from 4 ends.
No significant damage to the accommodation space.
Control room. Leak on the radar mast hold ground.
Submarine. Number 5 LP tank side leaking. We need to
People are reporting in around the submarine
My
any
intention
damage.
is to stay deep for 30 minutes and assess the situation at that time.
So the captain decided to stay at 500 feet for half an hour, make sure we're clear of the enemy, and then we'll come back up. Okay, that's a good scenario of showing you how we dive the submarine and the reason. Oh, that's good. We've got a blinking room. Don't need that all day. It's all right. I'm just conscious of the groups are coming thick and fast today. Are they still in the forward? You can see down there.
Still the very far end.
Are they?
Yeah.
That's no problem. Right, just talking about, basically we were on the surface, the captain dived the submarine. So to dive the submarine, you change the angle, point it down, so these two guys, the plainsmen, will, on the outside of the submarine at the fore end and the back end, it's got flaps, just like aeroplane wings. And that's what they call plainsmen. And these two guys would angle the boat down, and you probably heard the dialogue down to 70 up to 55.
Roger, 09.
As you're going down, obviously we open up these ballast valves, which on the outside of the submarine, if you can imagine the core of the submarine is a big fat cigar shape, but the ballast tanks are on the outside. So when they're full of air, we've got positive buoyancy, we're on the surface, and to dive you've got to fill those full of water. So we dive the submarine down, open the ballast valves, in goes the water, out goes the air. But in order to make sure that all that air is got rid of, it goes down to 70, comes back up to 55. In that coming back up process, you make sure that all the ballast tanks are completely full of oil. And then we come back up to 55 feet and use our periscopes, which is our periscope depth. Okay. And then when he eventually comes back up, it's the reverse procedure. So you close the ballast valve, you point the submarine up to go back to the surface, and then at the same time, a blast of HP air into the front of those ballast tanks, which forces out the water. And then as soon as the submarine breaks the surface and it gets positive buoyancy, because your buoyancy tanks are full of air, it comes onto the surface. And that's the simple explanation for diving and coming back.
Keep 53.
The two periscopes are the search periscope and the attack periscope. The search periscope is binocular, so it's just like looking through a pair of binoculars, and it can see to the horizon. Okay, and that's for general navigation and just searching around the seafront. When we get in range of a target or the enemy, we stop using the search periscope and start using the attack periscope. That is monocular, so it's a single lens and it's high resolution. So it's good for up to about 3,000 yards to see your target all around you. And that's the difference between the two periscopes. When you go outside on the jetty, if you look back up at the conning tower, you'll see very significantly, this is the fat one, that's the thin one. And it's very prominent which are the two. Okay. And that's the control room really. Any questions?
Just on a very mundane front, what happens to all the wastewater that the submarine generates?
Well, when you're dived, you want to keep the weight of the submarine roughly the same, so you don't discharge anything. For the toilet waste, shall we say, that goes into a holding tank, and then when we can, and when it gets full, we can pump it out and replace it with salt water. When you're cooking, the same thing. Any water waste goes into the waste tanks. There's lots of holding tanks in the bottom of the submarine. And then when you get to the surface, you can, discharge what you need to discharge, maintain your weight, and then when you dive again, you're okay. And with that question, a lot of people ask a question about the torpedo, because once you fire a torpedo, and I think you probably told you it weighs a ton. So once that's gone out of the tubes, you've lost a ton in torpedo. However, when you shut the front door of the torpedo tube, the amount of water in that torpedo tube weighs exactly a ton. So you haven't lost any weight in the submarine. You've lost a torpedo, but you've gained a ton of water. And that's dragged down into the submarine again, and then eventually it's redone. Very, very good. Right, the next bit you're going to see, you go through, and on the left is the radar office, and on the right is the communications office. There's then the toilets.
There's the communications office, look, with all the radios in. We've got a bit of the galley, look, they're cooking. Yeah, look in there, mate, the galley. Yeah.
I clicked it, it works.
Yeah. And then we've got the engine room. Noisy, isn't it? Noisy, the engine room. And you've got the rear torpedo tubes. You've got another torpedo, look. You've got some beers stacked in there. How about that? You've got some beers, look.
Oh, do these work? I put my mouth on one.
There's torpedoes. No, mate, I don't think so. Right, that's all I'm doing for now. So that's just a quick tour of the submarine at Gosport Submarine Museum. Okay, cheers, bye.